How long before the world's youngest continent revolts, asks Daniel Knowles. Makoko, a neighborhood in Lagos, Nigeria's biggest city, is a place that has become famous for its misery. It is a sort of floating slum underneath the third mainland bridge, a 12-kilometre stretch of concrete that connects Lagos Islands to the rest of the city. Once a fishing village, over the years thousands of shacks have been built in Makoko on land reclaimed from the bay by filling it with rubbish. People live in them, crowded 6 to a room. There is no running water. So hundreds of people make a living hauling in plastic containers filled from boreholes on the mainland. Children are bathed outside in buckets. Electricity is provided by generators, which gives the air the tinny taste of diesel. The alleyways reek of human shit. Lagos state government has been trying to get rid of Makoko for years. They send in bulldozers to tear down the shacks and clear the land for developers, but it never stays cleared for long. The slum grows out into the bay. New shacks built with wood are floated onto the water. People keep coming, drawn to the urban jungle by the hope, however slim, of making it big. Nobody knows how many people live there, but it could be as many as 250,000. 60 years ago, that was the entire population of Lagos. Now it's a sprawling, filthy megacity of perhaps 7 million. People overwhelm in its every space. They make their homes where they can, beneath underpasses, in derelict buildings, anywhere, without the thuggish security guards the rich hire to keep them out. Africa is the world's youngest continent. Between the Sahara and South Africa, in most countries, a majority of the population are children. In only a few countries is the median age higher than 20. This is not because people die young. For the most part, they don't anymore. It is the result of an enormous population boom. Then saying that in 50 years or so, more than half of the world's entire population growth will be in Africa. 2/5 of the world population will live on the continent. In the West, our countries continue to grow because life expectancy is going up, and thanks to immigration, eventually, since we all must die, they will start shrinking. By the end of the century, African babies will be a majority of those born. Africa could even be the only continent with a growing population. So what does this mean? The more optimistic business people I meet at conferences like to talk happily of a demographic dividend that will make them lots of money. Lots of Africans means a growing market after all. Africa will have something the rest of the world will lack, youth. Well, perhaps, but the trouble is that Africa is not getting richer, at least not fast. Just 10% of the world's population now lives below the World Bank's poverty line of $1.90 a day, down from 35% in 1990. But Africa is the exception. Over that same period, the number of extremely poor on the continent went up by almost 50 million. And they are not the fly-bitten, ignorant victims of famine we in the West grew up seeing on our televisions. They are urbanized, increasingly speak English and French, addicted to their mobile phones, and they are ambitious. Western governments fear that this huge poor continent is a bomb waiting to explode underneath Europe. Thousands of frustrated young men are already making the journey westwards in rickety boats from Libya. But what if millions did? And then says, what has fostered this complacency? Africa today is actually less self-sufficient in food than ever before. Talking about a political rally he covered in the Rift Valley where everybody was very poor, but yet 4 helicopters descended on the place. And then saying, where are the factories, the call centers, the big firms which could actually give jobs and hope to the frustrated young people? Urbanization ought to provide hope and industrialization, but it is not doing enough. Most African cities are like smaller versions of Lagos. People live in dysfunctional slums where the only jobs are servicing the whims of the elite. They work extremely hard just to survive. Water is carried, electricity is absent, food is cooked over open fires, disease is kept in check largely by cheap antibiotics. Meanwhile, the African rich opt out. They cope with potholes by driving Land Cruisers, When they get sick, they fly to Europe. Their children are educated at the best schools in the West. If you were a young African, would you put up with that, or would you revolt? And what happens then? At some point in the next few decades, we're going to find out. He's right, and I wrote about this in November, actually, 2014. I was talking about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa, and I said, what's clear is that a very young, very informed, very connected African youth demographic, many characterize this as a demographic dividend, which for beautiful Blaise Compaoré turned into a demographic terminator. And I said this is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and that a rebalancing has begun. But it's never going to be Libya.